The panelists come up on the stage and you all get your cup of tea.
Hello, yeah, I'm just going to send you the email in 5 minutes. Yeah, give me 5 minutes. I'm working on the presentation.
मेरी छोटी सी गुड़िया कितनी बड़ी हो गई, घर घर खेलती थी, अब घर संभालती है, ऑफिस संभालती है. I am so proud and I am so sorry. सॉरी कि ये सब तुम्हें अकेले करना पड़ता है. सॉरी कि जब तुम घर घर खेलती थी तो मैंने तुम्हें रोका नहीं. ये नहीं कहा कि ये सिर्फ तुम्हारा काम नहीं है, तुम्हारे हस्बैंड का भी है. पर कहता भी कैसे है.
और मेरी ग्रीन शर्ट धो देना.
मैंने भी तो कभी तुम्हारी मम्मी की हेल्प नहीं की, और तुमने जो देखा वही सीखा. तुम्हारे हस्बैंड ने भी बचपन में यही देखा होगा. घर घर खेलते वक्त वो टीवी देखने की या न्यूज़पेपर पढ़ने की एक्टिंग करता होगा, और तुम जैसी कोई छोटी सी लड़की चाय बनाने की एक्टिंग करती होगी. उसके डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, तुम्हारे डैड की तरफ से सॉरी, और हर उस डैड की तरफ से सॉरी जिसने कई कई सालों से एक गलत एग्जाम्पल सेट किया.
No problem.
पर अभी भी देर नहीं.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Hello.
इस सॉरी के साथ मैं अपनी तरफ से एक छोटी सी कोशिश.
Anil, there's a little video going on. As soon as it's done, we'll start.
Sorry.
Yeah.
किचन का किंग ना बन पाऊं तो कम से कम लॉन्ड्री में तो हाथ बटाऊं. इतने साल एक गलत
Can
एग्जाम्पल
everybody
सेट किया
please
है.
take their seats? Could I request
अब
all of
कुछ
you to
सही
take
कर
your
जाओ.
seats, please?
तुम्हारा पापा.
Could I request all the guests to please take your seats? The tea will be served to you on your tables. Please take your seat. So, Anil, you could introduce the panelists. And just to introduce Anil Padmanabhan has 27 years of experience in journalism. He writes regular columns and is well known to all in the media world. Over to you, Anil. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Just a correction, that's 30 years now. So I'm even a bigger geriatric than what I projected myself to be. Actually, I won't introduce the panelists formally because I think we have sufficient reading matter with us and most of them are well known themselves. So, and because we are running behind schedule, so at the back, can we just be a little quiet, please? Okay. So, I mean, the topic, it's the final topic of the day, and I think we stand between all of us and dinner. So, there's a greater sense of urgency, and I guess we must be a little tired the whole day. But I was in part of the previous session, and I was very impressed. I mean, there was a lot of participation both from the panel and the audience. And I just thought the format we'll follow is that each of the speakers makes a 5-minute context presentation. Nobody's using slides, right? Oh, yeah. And before that, I'd like to invite Archana, who will run us through. It's a video, right? Or slide? It's a slideshow. Okay. Setting the context. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Archana Gupta. I'm the president of FICCI Ladies Wing. So we have just done a study along with the Gina Davis Institute in Hollywood about gender in media. And we did a film festival in Bombay on gender-based film. We had about 30 films. So just sharing, as part of the whole exercise, we studied gender and we came up with some recommendations about how we can influence, how media can be used to influence gender perceptions. These are some standard figures. This is just to say that, you know, all is not good. In India, we have 70 million missing women. We own less than 10% of businesses and 10% of land assets, and about 3% of value of production in MSMEs is by women. What is the problem with portrayal of women in films? Now, stereotyping, hypersexualization, underrepresentation on screen, underrepresentation in the industry. here I'd just like to share. This is a very old shlok, and a lot of you may have come across it. It's more than 1,000 years old, and it's about women, what an ideal woman should be, and it is still quoted. Karyeshu dasi, karneshu mantri, bhojeshu mata, shayaneshu rambha, rupeshu lakshmi, kshamayeshu dharitri. In forgiveness, like the earth. And this is still the role model, which is a centuries-old stereotype that we have in our country. I think it could be a role model for the heroine, the woman protagonist in films still today. She's supposed to be good at everything, look beautiful, be the ideal homemaker, and along with that, be as forgiving as the earth, put up with all the nonsense that is dealt out to her. So this is a stereotyping. If we look at the study results, women are typically shown as non-working in films. This is a global study I'm quoting from. What is also interesting is that of those shown holding a job in films, 22% were women, while the actual ratio in the sample countries was 40%. So they are, fewer women are shown holding jobs in film than is there in actual life. Employed women are seldom shown in positions of power. Women represent less than 15% of business executives, and especially in STEM and in leadership positions. Hypersexualization. Geena Davis' study states that India tops the chart in showing attractive women in its movies. This Geena Davis study is studied 11 countries and the top selling films over 3 years. Up to 35% of these female characters are shown with some nudity. Indian films are third behind German and Australian movies in showing females in sexy attire, and women are twice as likely as men to be shown in sexually revealing clothing and 5 times as likely to be referenced as attractive. Underrepresentation on screen. World over in movies, female characters are underrepresented. In the US study, the number of films with female protagonists were about 11%. In the sample set, no Indian movie had a female lead or co-lead, while South Korean films had 40% of the films. Female comprised 33% of all characters in 2011, up from 28% in 2002. In India, we are at about 25%, which was amongst the lowest in the study. An interesting international measure of this is the very basic Bechdel test. A movie clears the test if it satisfies 3 conditions. The movie has to have at least 2 women in it who talk to each other about something besides a man. That's really basic. On a website, in evaluating 4,500 international films, only 58% of the films passed the test. Interestingly, a study in 2014 found that films that passed the test had about a 37% higher return on investment. This is the same as women corporate directors, right? If you have more women on board, you get a better return. In women corporate directors, there's a study by Catalyst, which shows that you get almost a 50% higher return on, the company gets a 50% higher return on investment if it has more women on board. So this is also true for international movies. Here we can say that typically the decision makers in the industry are typically men. There are very few women who are writing or who are directing or who are the executives who take production decisions. India has only 9% female directors, 12% female writers, and 15% female producers. A low number of women decision makers translates into a lower number of women on screen. And it is measured that movies with female writers or directors have significantly more women on screen. Also in production companies, women typically hire more women, as is true in other industries. So why the Bechdel test fails is that if a man is probably writing the screen, he's not even aware that there is a whole world of women out there who are talking to each other, not about them. It's But what can be done? This is the film, some slides from our film festival. We screened in particular a movie called Driving with Selvi, which was about a woman driver. Flow is doing a large nationwide program on training women for taxis and drivers. So we tied that in with that. The role models created make a big difference in terms of its what people learn from it. But in terms of what recommendations Flow has given for the film industry, is that this research should, of course, be shared. But the main thing that comes through is the subliminal messages that are given by the films about what women are doing. And that is where they need to work work at women should have STEM jobs. She should be shown having her own identity. She should not be shown restricted in her space. She should be in control of her own body. Increase the number and job diversity of females in children's programming. Earlier, we were talking about adolescent girls, and that's where the chain begins. This is something. And in terms of the government, the recommendations we were giving is to encourage and skill more female filmmakers, and encourage institutions such as NFTC to finance more women-centric films. Companies should be encouraged to use their CSR budgets to finance films which promote gender empowerment. And Flow, of course, we are carrying out this exercise of conferences and seminars across the country to sensitize filmmakers in each regional industry on this. This is something about our transport. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Archana. Just to set the context a little further, it was a very graphic display of what needs to be done. I just wanted to share a factoid. It's a partial self-plug about the paper I work for. It's called Mint. It's Business Daily. It's just a positive thing that it is doable. Like I run a team of reporters. Part of my job function is that. So when we started in 2006, exactly 10 years, I just realized, I had about 8 reporters reporting into me, of which only 3 were women. Now I have 20, of which 13 are women. Now the thing is that I didn't go out there to hire women or men or something. I just went out to hire the best talent that would work best for Mint. And it is also something that didn't do consciously, in the sense of looking for gender balance. And I'm so happy because also I didn't notice it. My colleagues in the leadership team noticed it. And in an offsite, I was questioned as to how come you have so many women in your team. And I said, I don't. So then we did a math and I was proven wrong. So I was saying that it is eminently doable, because I followed from the previous session and from this rather sad thing about how the stereotyping of women. So just thought I'll share that factoid before we request our panel to go. So if I can begin from my left, since I am left, favor my left. So I can begin with you, Bharti.
Yeah. So you did show your colors, left of center, Anil. Yeah, hi. Good evening. It's great to be here and listen to some fabulous sessions today and truly awe-inspiring and humbling stories. I sort of heard these stories and I was wondering how little in comparison have I achieved, truly. The topic that I'm going to talk about is how can media help break the stereotypes? And I will talk it from my narrow perspective of entrepreneurship. I'm a venture investor and we invest in entrepreneurs who hopefully will give us great returns. Now, why am I interested in seeing a lot more entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs than we see today, or at least women in the senior leadership positions in the startup world? Why do I want to see it? For a purely selfish reason. My objective is to really increase the returns for our investors, and several studies have shown, one as recent as last year by Dow Jones, that showed that if the more women you had, you increased the probability of success of a startup. So it went from, if you had only one woman, either as a founder or in the senior leadership position, the success ratio was 50%. If you had 4 or 5 women in either of these 2 positions, the success ratio went up by to 2/3. So I have a very selfish reason. I want to see a lot more successful companies than have to write them off. It's not only the ratio of success versus failure, it's also the returns that come out of these companies. And this survey was done over, I think, over 5,000 companies, not a small number. It showed that the highest return in terms of return on equity or total returns to shareholders, which was at, I think, 33, 34, 35% in that range, came from startups which had at least 3 to 4 women, either in the senior leadership position or as founders. So I think the economic sense, there is a huge economic sense for people like me to want to see a lot more entrepreneurs. And what is the status today? I tried to Google some numbers to get, there is no reliable data. I found some SIDBI's report that came out and that said there were about 13, 14% entrepreneurs who are women. And that has gone up from mid-80s when it was 8.5%. So mid-80s to now, 30 years later, we've gone up by 2x. Doesn't speak well for our ecosystem. There was another data that said there are, it's 10% women entrepreneurs in the startup world. Now, my submission is the actual number is perhaps a lot less. There are 2 kinds of women entrepreneurs, which is for males as well. One is the what we call necessity-driven entrepreneurs. So when SIDBI did this survey, they included the laundry lady, they included the vegetable lady, everybody as an entrepreneur. But that was really out of necessity. And where I invest is what we call more opportunity-driven entrepreneurs. Now, my submission, based substantially on anecdotal data of having been in this industry for 15 years, is that we are probably below 5%. So out of every 100 startups that we see, I think it's less than 5% which have either a woman in this leadership position or woman as a co-founder. It's quite a pathetic. And why do we have that? I think, and I believe media can play a huge role in there. And I'll draw some analogy from what I've seen in the male world of entrepreneurship. If you look back at our social history, or we didn't really have the term entrepreneur for a long time. The term was businessman, right? And even boys, young boys, men, did not choose to become businessmen because it was seen as not a very good career option. It was seen as somebody who was cutting taxes or dodging, having certain practices that weren't favorable socially. And so we had a very low social currency on the term, till I think in the 90s when people like Saurabh Srivastava, people like Infosys, or the Wipro stories came out. And they talked about how to create an enterprise, how to do it legally, how to do it ethically, and how to do it profitably for all stakeholders. And I think media played a huge role in that storytelling because media disseminated those stories. Media talked about those stories. Media showcased those stories. So I think that was one important reason that the entrepreneurship world increased among the men. I think second is a role model. I think the role models are extremely important for any development in any field, whether it is in the corporate world or whether it is in the entrepreneur world. If you look at the general entrepreneur world, which is male dominated, and I think we have a lot more role models today. We have a lot more younger role models today. So we have the Faninder Sama of Red Bus, who by the time he was 30 created wealth for everybody at the table, for his investors, for his employees, for himself. We have the Bansals who created billion-dollar companies, or we have, Vivek of Chumbak who creates very iconic brand, has created iconic brand for India. Now, what does this role model do? It sort of tells young graduates coming out of engineering colleges or from others that they can touch and feel that role model. They can feel they're like me. There is a commonality of education background. There's a commonality of socio-economic background. And if they can do it, therefore I can do it. And I think the other one that media needs to do is talk about the women entrepreneurs a lot more. And, not just the few that we have who created multi-billion-dollar companies, but also talk about women entrepreneurs who are maybe created a $10 million company or 20 crore company or whatever number. It doesn't have to be, everybody doesn't have to be at $1 billion. That I think is the other important role that media can play in disseminating the stories of role models, of telling the stories or making sure they're heard. The other way that media, I think, can play a big role is just change the narrative of how do we define a success? How do we define a successful entrepreneur? I think, by and large, the definitions that we see in the popular lexicon are very masculine terms. When I say masculine terms, when people say he's aggressive, he's a go-getter, he's a risk-taker. Now, those are the terms very often, they don't naturally relate to women, or women don't relate to those terms. Now, what does an entrepreneur do, essentially? Entrepreneur is a creative person. He or she is solving a problem. So they identify a problem and then they go about solving it. And how do they create value? They create value by collaboration, by management, by charting uncharted territories, by navigating the unknown. And I think women are very good at doing all that. So if we change the terms from risk-taker, go-getter, to aggressive, to saying, here is a creative person. Entrepreneur is essentially a creative person who's solving a problem, who's managing different, multiple stakeholders. I think that narrative can also help women identify a lot more with being entrepreneurs, or what it means to being an entrepreneur, or what it takes to become an entrepreneur. My submission here is that as a homemaker is actually the biggest risk taker. Nobody's born a homemaker. Nobody's born an entrepreneur. And homemakers learn on the job, right? As a 21, 25-year-old, you get married. You have no clue how to deal with your in-laws, how to deal with the household help that comes, or the gardener, whatever level you are. So I think, and they are going through an unknown territory. So I think women are really good at being entrepreneurs in that sense. So that's my, to-do list for media, that tell stories, disseminate, show role models, and specifically, if tomorrow Anil gets a story on some male entrepreneur, if you can ask your reporter, show me one female entrepreneur-run company, or if you get a comment from a male entrepreneur, please ask them get me one from a woman entrepreneur as well. I think the first response is we don't have so many of them, but I think if you dig deep, you will find them. It is a story. It's again an analogy that I derive from. My job as the board member at Redbus. A few years ago, we were looking to hire a chief marketing officer, and Redbus had no women representation. I was the only one on the board, and by the senior leadership of founding team, there was nobody. So I proposed to the CEO. I said, why don't you ask the recruiter, why aren't we seeing any female resumes? So he said, they haven't sent me. So I said, no, can you tell them we need to see 50% of resumes from women? We may not make the choice. We may not choose. So he said, our red bus markets are all small towns. Will they travel? So I said, that's your condition. Your job description needs to state that you will go into smaller towns which may not have fancy hotels. You have to travel by bus. And let the women step up. Let them make the choice. Do I want this job or not? And once we put it to the recruiting agency that we need to see so many, women, resumes from women, we started seeing them. Till then, because it was so easy to find people like us, hire, similar background, you find men, and therefore those resumes showed up. So Anil, that's your to-do list, to make sure that next time you get a story on a male entrepreneur, you've got to tell your reporter, find me one on female. Thank you very much.
I forgot to share again a self-plug on Mint, but we actually appointed a gender editor last year. I think many of you know her, Namita Bandare, my outstanding journalist and now colleague. So she's been inducted primarily to address the issues that you are raising. So we have, over the last 1 year of her, she just completed a year with us, a body of work which is devoted precisely to addressing these issues. But we have sought not to see it purely, you know what I meant? We tried not to fall prey to stereotypes, and addressed it as a way of life. So we have tried, and I think we have done a lot because it has brought a certain balance into the newsroom which was there, but it's got more pronounced, if I may say.
Thank you.
Asma.
Thank you so much. Bahut shukriya. Thank you so much. I'm really privileged and I'm honored that I'm here representing Pakistani women at this platform. after lunch, I think it's very difficult to speak out, not for me, but difficult for you to listen as well, because it's little sleepy. But I just want to share a few of my stories, because when I started working with media, first of all, I was born in a very conservative family, religious family, and where there was no concept of women doing work in media, coming up on television. It was very hard to believe that I belong to a Sayyid family, which is a very conservative in Pakistan. So it was impossible. But then again, my father, who always encouraged me, and he was very proud of me when I was kid. And naturally, we need icons, around us, and family around us. So my father was one of those heroes whom I idolize, and he supported me a lot. Then my brothers. But when I was grown up, though my mother was a teacher, and she's a retired teacher, and one of my cousins, she was doctor, and family of my family was, most of them, they were either teachers or doctors or something with medical department. But you see, there was no one from media. So when I was there to choose my career, so it was very difficult for me to convey to my family that I want to go to media. And even my father was alive at that time, and I was about to leave for university in Lahore. My father said that mujhe dar lagta hai, I don't want to allow you to go far. You can study here in Qaidam University in Islamabad or somewhere. But I said, Father, I said to my Abba Jan that look at me. I'm not going to have somebody with me, and I will not ask you to I want to get married with that man, you see. So I will not make any choice of mine. So he just smiled and he said, okay, no, I never doubted about you. And he was like, थोड़े से वो संभल गए, थोड़े से डर गए कि मैं क्या कह रही हूँ. So he said, I never meant that. But I said, no, you didn't. But you did. Somewhere that was there in your mind, that you are not allowing me to go to Lahore. You are not ready to trust me. But he was quite embarrassed at that time. I still remember his face. And he said, yes, you can go. Then I went to Lahore. And you see, I started working with PTV. And it was Jana Musharraf's era. And since my childhood, I was very, Benazir Bhutto was my icon, and she was my heroine, and I always idolized her. So you see, I was pro-democracy, and I joined PTV when Jana Musharraf was there. So I started working over there. Then when I started working, I went to the newsroom, and at one very fine morning, our editor came and he said, who wants to become reporter? If somebody wants to become reporter, he or she can come to this desk. And the other one who wants to work on desk, आपको पता होगा इस बारे में. So he said, if somebody wants to work on desk, he can come on the other desk. So I just asked my colleague that what is this reporting and something, because I am here, but I have never been to this media and reporting. So he said, it's a very tough job, none of your business, You should work 9 to 5 and it's easy for you. So मैं हमेशा से बड़ी बागी रही हूँ. So I revolted, in fact, there and then. And I said, no, अगर ये मुश्किल है, I will do this. And I have to do this, you see. So I sat over there with blushed face, and I was quite angry at that person who offered me a day before that please have a cup of tea with me and I can drop you at your place. And he was very generous. So you see, I said, no, I will do my work and I will do reporting. So I was in reporting. Finally, one day my editor came and he said, now what is your beat? I said, what beat? I have no concept of beat. So I said, I don't know what to cover and what to not. He said, okay, you just go to Meena Bazaar and fun fair. So you have to cover activities of women, and then there is a fashion show and something like that. So you have to report. So I said, why can't the person sitting next to me, why can't he go? So he said, no, you can't understand, he's a man. He cannot, he's a male reporter. He cannot, it's a small thing. You have to work. I refused. And I said, if he cannot go, I won't be able to go as well. So it was, then I started working as an investigative journalist. And then Geo came and, as an independent media, I was the first person who covered Parliament. I was the first parliamentary correspondent, first TV talk show host, first war correspondent. And war, again, covering the war, it was in 2006, while it was Lebanon-Israel war, one of our very dear colleague, very famous anchor, Hamid Mir, very known journalist, in fact, he left for coverage. And when he left, somebody said in the newsroom that, look, Punjabi mein unhone kaha ki khedni zananiyan di. Women cannot cover wars, It's not your game. So I was just listening, I was typing my story, I just heard, and again, I'm very thankful to my colleague. I rushed outside, I picked up the phone, and I called my boss that I want to go to Lebanon, Israel, to cover the Israel war. And he said, soch lo, ek baar, mushkil kaam hai. So I said, no, I will go. So he allowed me, and I'm thankful to him as well. And I went to cover the war. Then there was earthquake in 2005, before that, this event. So I went to Balakot. I stayed there for 12 nights. Even my male colleagues, they refused to go over there. And I stayed there, and I was working like a social worker. People were calling me, and I was with them. I was giving message on air, on TV, and people were coming to me, and I was parceling those jo bhi saman tha to the needy people up on the hill, you see. So it was like this. So I think the very funny thing which I forgot to mention, when I started working, my audience or my key man whom jinse interview karna chahi thi, he was supposed to speak to my cameraman, and they were not even able to see at me. They were not used to look at me. They were not taking me serious. I'm working, I'm asking you question, and he was looking at my cameraman, you see. So, frankly, once I stopped a person, he was a minister, and I said, look at me. Why don't you look? I'm not as bad as you think. You can look at me, you see. So it was like this. Then there was pretty woman, this, my friend told earlier in the previous session, you see, you are so pretty, you must come up, and you must come to dramas, and you must come to films. This is not your job, you see. These type of comments. Even then we listen. After doing a lot in my last 15 years, 15 साल में क्या नहीं किया है, वॉर से लेके गली कूचों में काम किया, टेररिज्म. Then I was threatened by, I was banned by General Musharraf. I was the only female anchor among 5 male anchors who was banned. I was followed by agencies, at that time. They were used to follow me, and they were used to take me to my home. And in their safe custody, I was used to roam around, in fact. So it was like that. And then Taliban, I went to Swat, I interviewed Sufi Muhammad and Muslim, Haji Muslim, and they spoke to me just because I was covering my head. And when I interviewed, they started giving me threats. So it was like, again, recently, my very dear Mullah Aziz in Lal Mosque, Red Mosque, he issued a tape, and he named myself as well. I'm very lucky that he took my name. So, again, he said that she is working against us, and I am not doing anything. So, मेरे कुछ students हैं, अगर वो बुरा मान गए तो फिर, I won't be responsible. So, like this, you see. So, it is there on the net, on social media, you can see it. So, it's like, इतना कुछ करने के बावजूद भी कहते हैं, हाँ, she is best among women. So I feel so helpless that look at me, I am dying, I'm working hard, I'm working day and night, and you are still making this remark, she's just nothing. She's not competing us. She's competing the women, you see. Look at them. So it's like, I mean, it's an irony, I think. And, but let me tell you one thing. I think I am taking much time. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So, बहुत ज़्यादा देखिए एक male chauvinism, it's part of our life, you see. Even then, you know, when hudud was repealed in Pakistan, and I was covering Parliament, hudud was an ordinance issued by General Ziaul Haq, and General Ziaul Haq ने ये कानून बनाया था, if somebody is raped, if some woman is raped, she has to produce the evidence, in fact, to defend herself. That was the law. And it was a taboo to speak about that in our society, you see, in 2006, in 2004. But we did it. And we started, in fact, Geo started a campaign against this law. And I was the main person who was covering from the parliament. I was talking to the people. I was talking to the parliamentarians. And, you know, we established a ground to break this taboo. And trust me, when the law was passed and it was repealed by all political parties in Pakistan, that was a great time for us. And even then now we are struggling. We have laws against honor killing. We have laws against, I think, women empowerment, for women empowerment. And you see, we have 1 Nobel Prize by Malala Yousafzai, 2 Oscars by Sharmeen Obaid-Chunai, and we proud women of Pakistan, we are standing. We are fighting with mullahs, as Asma Jahangir is fighting even now. We are fighting with all these men, or all these, elements who are stopping us, and they cannot. I'm sorry. So, but they cannot stop us, and they will not stop us. Malala is from Sawat, and you know the story about Malala, and you know everybody. We have many women in Pakistan who are working. You cannot even imagine. I belong to a village. I was born there. I was brought up there. We have confident women. We have great singers. We have great drama artists. We have great filmmakers who are from the left. And and we are Mukhtara Mai, and so many. There are many names, and it's a great honor for me that I am from them, and I will be from them. So media can perform a great role, and we are doing our duty. Thank you.
Thank you, Asma. My sign language was for something else, not to cut you short. I've always known journalism is a very tough business in Pakistan. And hats off to our colleagues there, and of course to you. I mean, unlike you, I only cover fiscal crimes, which are never life-threatening like for you. But I'm amazed at your sense of humor, candidness, and the way you put across your point. Brilliant. Thank you so much. Now, Christine, the bar's been set extremely high for you. I don't envy you going after her.
And also dinner's coming close, so I'll keep it short. I'm going to take a different perspective and look at it from the perspective of people working with the media, so providing people, providing stories, and providing ideas. And I'm really going to look at where we are today, what the way forward is using technology, and I'll end with an appeal to all of you on how we can influence it. And if I just start with where we stand today, the fact that media is key in influencing perceptions, I don't think anyone would challenge. TV, drive perception, print to a certain extent, radio depending on the countries, and social media depending on the parts of the world. But when you look at who shapes within the media, who shapes the perception, in other words, who narrates the world, there's been various studies recently in the US from the Women's Media Center, also from the Op-Ed Project. And I give it to you, it's 62% of the byline written in the world are by men. So the perception we have, the perception of the world that we're given is a male one. Just by way of an example, if a politician or a senior businessman decides to change his career for the sake of his family, media won't believe it. So all the narrative around it will be there must be something else, given that we were talking about changing perceptions. For the woman, it's clear, because in any case, it's very difficult to juggle work and family. So someone giving up because they've had too much would be normal. However, the trend in terms of who is narrating is positive. And I was just talking to Archana before, and I hear that in India, most of the publishing houses now have women at the top. And that is very important because in order to drive change, you need to raise awareness. If we look back, certainly in print, the readers of print papers are fundamentally male. So there is no incentive for media to change the way they write. It starts with having media being in crisis themselves and trying to find a new business way for themselves, and having more and more women getting to top positions in the media. And there we're lucky. I mean, if I look at the changes in Europe, and I'm talking more about European media, which I know better, at The Economist, you have the first ever female editor. At one of the biggest German dailies, you have the first ever editor. In weekly magazines, you have the same, and the FT as well. And one of the changes, for instance, at the FT I've noted, is if you look at what they do with their bylines, so basically what really draws your eye, they try and make sure that every day there's a woman now mentioned. They're not doing it again for the sake of women. They've just noticed that women like to read articles written by women. So in order to change the readership and to attract women, that is one of the things that they're doing. However, what we still face is the topic gap. There are economists around, but when women write about economics, they get less picked up. And actually, if you look at the number, it's only 11% writing about economics and legacy media, and it slightly goes up to 19%. Where we are in the majority is what is called the 4 Fs, which is food, fashion, family, and funnily enough, I wouldn't have thought it, furniture. But okay. But fundamentally, it's education, which we were talking about before, lifestyle, health, or religion. Many things where when we look at changing the way society works, in my view, are actually a chance, because it is to changing healthcare, it is to changing lifestyle that you will drive change also in economics and society. But that is where we are. Another topic, and I mean here it's actually different because you are the one, for once you are the one who is in minority. But if you go to conferences, most panels are dominated by men. And there is something that we can all do, and certainly that I'm looking at also in the way I work. Do I want to send the best people that I have to an only male panel? It's actually starting to be a reputation challenge. There are, thank God, organizations looking at what they call all-male panels and asking the questions. Is that representative of the world we live in? And do we want to be part of it? So that's really the situation. But what's the way forward? And where do we stand? If we look at the internet, for instance, there is a clear trend that in future, more women will be using the internet than men. And even more interesting, they need it and they use it for getting jobs, so they don't take it just for fun, but in terms of getting access to jobs and therefore changing the gender gap. And this is where I think a key change is with the new media versus the legacy media. There is less, and I'm not saying no, but there is less censorship. If you go via print, if you go via TV, you go via editors, you go via censorship. Every woman can drive a blog, every woman can have a website. And yes, while you may have, and you do, face censorship or backlash, you can have your voice, and with that voice, influence the debate that is happening in society. This is actually happening more and more, and women have been driving governments to change policies based on hashtag campaigns that did generate, and we were talking about it before, that did have an impact. So this leads me to my last and final point on speaking up. Linking to what Archana was saying, not many women go into media, and it's actually quite interesting to see how women, not only in films, but also in the media, are positioned. There's a study going back to 1974, which said that the lack of women in media represented their role. Now, if you look at how women are pictured, it's maybe less in sexy dresses, but a male CEO is going to be pictured behind a desk. And they recently did a big interview of a female CEO of an airline. And guess where they pictured her? In the middle of a plane. So the immediate connotation and feedback online was, well, there is the head stewardess. This is not the CEO. So what is very important is to think about how you're going to be portrayed. The power of picture is not to be underestimated. That is what people will remember of whatever you have. At the same time, and we were talking about stereotypes, yes, there are stereotypes, and yes, we can work around them. And many women, again, shy away of giving portraits in interviews once they are in leading positions, because we're sick and tired of being asked how we got there, how do you cope, how do your children feel about it, how, bless you, does your husband feel about it? But on the other hand, that's reality. And the best way to change these stereotypes is to talk about them until people are not interested anymore, until it becomes so normal, and until we've helped each other so much, and therefore being able to be authentic. And learning by doing is the parole. Many, many women that I ask to speak on media don't want to do it because they're not the perfect communicators. Yes, but there is no born perfect communicator. And men never have an issue with that. So, the key lesson for me is when you read media or you see yourself on TV, but specifically when you read about yourself, don't believe it when it's good, and therefore don't believe it when it's bad. Just get on with it.
If you can.
I'd just like to say something from what you said, that when we have observed that when there are unmediated situations, women tend to do better. And I just share some, women own barely 10% of businesses in India, but organization like Snapdeal, which allows you to list and there's no banker deciding to give you a loan or deciding to give you land, has 30% women vendors. Similarly, in Uber, as an example, in New York, 20% of its drivers are women, while in the regular yellow taxi business, it's about 2%. So here in regular old-style media or in television, where there is somebody hiring you, or somebody promoting you, or somebody deciding whether you go on the front page or you go on page 3, there is mediation. And you will see typically fewer women. But on social media or blog sites, you typically see more women. So as we get more unmediated, I think women are going to come forward.
Archana is a great point because I think a lot of the narratives that most of us have gone over are legacy media issues. New media is, because by its very nature, is inclusive, like social media, like she mentioned, you don't need permission to set up a blog and do. So it is definitely transforming. I just wanted to clear the air. I am on this panel not as a male, but as a friend of Ipsita. So technically, this is what we'll call a fanel, female panel. So, I mean, you were referring to as manel, the male panel. So, okay. So we have, we are running out of time. Though she's a friend, she's a taskmaster too. And she's known me for over, 20 odd years, more than that. So I just thought we can have time for about 2 or 3 questions. And I suspect they'll all be directed to my left. So, but just 2 or 3 questions, very brief. And please introduce yourself.